so I just wanted to show you, this is a special part of our farm that nobody ever really sees. It's our creek that goes through. It winds and turns quite a bit, and along our creek we get elderberry bushes. So we're out gathering elderberries today, and I always try to leave a few so that the birds can eat and so that they can replant themselves. They're a very tiny berry, and as you can see, they grow in an umbrella type. And there's another berry similar called a pokeweed. You want to make sure that you are not picking pokeweeds because they are poisonous. Pokeweeds are much bigger, and when you squeeze them in your hand, they turn the same color. So this is the elderberry, and they have a little seed inside. They make delicious pies and jellies and jams, but if you make a syrup out of them, which I'll show you later, it's one of the best cold and flu preventatives and help you get over that because they're so rich in vitamin C. So everybody, this is the elderberry picking 2015. This is about August 24th. So this is the time to get out and pick them. Some of them are still a little green. There's a cluster up there. We just leave those behind, and you can come back and get those later, save them for the birds. As always, thanks for watching, everybody. Do your homework, and don't eat anything that you're not sure what it is. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye. So I just wanted to show you so that you don't get confused. This is the pokeweed, and this is a pokeweed berry. They grow differently than the elderberry. They don't grow in an umbrella. And then the stems get real pink. So that's the pokeweed. Poisonous. Stay, don't eat it, and don't feed it to the animals. Okay, so at this point I have brought all of the elderberries to the house, and I have given them a rinse in the sink. Now, a really good way to process your elderberries is to, after washing them, roll them between your fingers, and this way you get very little stem in your berry. But I have an easier suggestion for you that has worked really well, and this entire colander full of berries has been done with the freezing method. So you can, it's best to lay them out on a tray. I had actually frozen them in my bowl because it got late in the evening and I wasn't able to finish. You can freeze these out on a tray. Parchment paper is highly recommended so they're not sticking to the metal pan. And then these will roll off really, really easily without a lot of stem. And then you've got a nice clean bowl of elderberries. So this is how I process the elderberries, and then we will get them all set up for the syrup, and I'll show you the syruping. So for this elderberry syrup recipe, you want to use either fresh or dried ginger. Okay, for making the elderberry syrup, I have my water in a container. This is a quadruple batch that I'm making. So I'll post the recipe for you, but you can double it, triple it, you know, however you like. I have this restaurant size stock pot that I use for large batches of things. So I've got the water and the elderberries. You want to boil this on high. You want to get it up to that boil. I've just added my cloves and my cinnamon. Now I'm using ground cloves today. You can use fresh cloves. This is ginger, and this is fresh ground ginger. And for this particular recipe, I don't really peel the ginger. Everything's going to be filtered out. I'm going to strain everything, and I want every bit of that flavor. At $4.99 a pound, that's the cost of some meats. So we're going to use up all of our product. Some people prefer to peel it and then grate it that way. A trick about grating it, use a larger setting. A chef friend of mine had said that if you cover your grater with plastic, it helps to not get gunked up in there. Watch your fingers when you're grating too. And if you have any kind of openings in your skin at all, I actually got bit by a cat yesterday. It really stings to get that in there. So I just want to warn you in advance, if you have eczema, you know, any cuts or scratches, to wear the gloves, because otherwise you're going to be itching and in pain all night. So everything is at the boil, and you can add this as it's cold and let it rise to the boil. Now we're going to turn it down to a simmer. Not too low, because you want to keep the temperature hot enough that the water is going to reduce. It's going to reduce by about half. Then you know it's done. So we're just going to set this for about 45 minutes. Check on it then. With a larger batch, sometimes it can take a little longer, or if you don't have the proper temperature setting. So just remember to reduce by half. After it's reduced by half, we'll do the straining process and then adding the honey. I also did want to say that when you reduce your temperature, you're going to want to cover it and keep it covered. I come back and stir it every now and then just to keep an eye on it. And, you know, for the afternoon, I'll fold laundry and just stay close by so that you don't have a boil over, because then you're going to have purple and blue mess all over your oven and kitchen. So just remember to keep an eye on it. So now for this step of the elderberry syrup, I have drained off the syrup from the pan into the blender. Now if you have an immersion blender, this works really well. I'd actually let this cool for about 20 or 30 minutes, because you don't want to heat your honey. If you heat your honey, it loses a lot of the enzymes that help you with getting better. So store-bought honey a lot of times can be heated. We're using our own raw honey. The best thing to do is to get raw honey from any local beekeeper. So this is just all the berries and bits of ginger or clove, and you can press it to get any extra juice out of it, which is always a good thing. And if you compost this, you can expect to get some new elderberries growing. So what I'm going to do, and I've done it before, is I'm going to scatter this in an area that the elderberries already grow to help propagate future elderberry bushes. Some people do grow these and have them in their yard. You could certainly do that. We have a creek that goes through the farm that I showed you in the video, and they grow all along that creek, and there's one small section not by the water on a roadside. So I went through there yesterday and got this second batch of elderberries picked. Probably 20 different plants growing right in that one area. Now if you are looking for elderberries in the wild of your own, in the springtime when the white flowers start blooming is a good time to try to find them. We kind of go on nature walks through our property regularly throughout the year, and during the different seasons looking for mushrooms or anything, we just kind of note what trees are there. In the landscape and survey departments at some of these stores, you can get a plastic type fabric that you could tie on a tree, so you can label all the different specimens, which makes it really nice for cleaning up, because then I can label for my husband the mulberry trees and the elderberry bushes so that he doesn't cut them down. So we've got most of that. You can see it's real thick coming out of here. And you don't have to do this part. You can skip that part. I just try to get as much out of it as I can. So just putting that aside. This is a double batch. So I'm putting in 2 cups of honey. And you can stir this in while it's still warm. I find if I blend it with the blender, it goes really quickly, but you do get some foam on the top. So I just spoon that foam off. It's the same foam that you would get if you were making jams or jellies. Now in the canner, here on the stove, I've got a couple of jars warming up. And I put ours in pint jars because we have a family. If you wanted to do smaller, like 16-ounce jars or anything, that's real good for a single or a couple person, or to give away as gifts. I've seen some Etsy shops where people will sell this elderberry syrup and send it to you. If you don't have wild berries growing, Wild Mountain Herbs sells dehydrated berries, and you can get just the elderberry syrup right from a health food store. It's under the name Sambuku. Somewhere around here I have a lid for this. Here we go. So I'm just going to blend this real quick. So that's mixing in our honey. And if you feel like it's not blended well, you can definitely go longer, but you can see here I've got about an inch of foam. So the longer I blend it, the more foam we're going to get. And it just doesn't look as pretty in the jar. So you can let that foam settle or spoon it off. So what I've been doing, I want to pull these jars out. And of course we've got the fans sterilized and the lids warming up. I always just try to make sure I get any excess water out of the jars. So you're going to water process these just like you would any other canning item. Usually I take my bands out a little bit earlier than this, or I just sanitize them when I do the jars. Okay. For the foam, you can see how it as you watch it, it gets to be real eerie. Anything that was in the foam that is liquid just kind of drops. Now you certainly can just bottle it with the foam in it, and without the blender you don't get the foam. It just doesn't look as pretty. And a lot of it will settle also over time. I remember when I was young, my mom used to make jams and jellies, and she used a pectin wax on the top instead of canning them. And she never skimmed the foam off the top, so it was always kind of like dried foam underneath that pectin. I don't think it hurts the quality of it at all. It just doesn't look as pretty. Okay, so because I'm using the blender, I can just pour right out of this. If you sometimes it dribbles down the side a little bit. Also, if you have not mixed it in here, you can use a canning funnel. So you always want to can filling up hot jars because the temperature extreme can crack the jars. Also, I always put a towel doubled over on the countertop. And then anything extra like that, I'll just make a tea out of it and drink it right away. Give myself a big dose of it. Hi there. So now these are all ready for the canner. If you do spill anything on the rims, you're going to want to wipe those clean. always want to make sure you have a canning rack so those aren't sitting on the very bottom. And if you need to add extra water at this point, if they're not covering the lids of the jars, I always save my water from my lids and bands for that. And then in reserve, I always have an extra tea kettle. Now you don't want to set your timer until that water is reboiling. So keep a close eye on that.